From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We are joined, as always, with our super producer, Dylan, the Tennessee pal, Fagan. Most importantly, you are you. You are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know in 2025. Welcome back.
Ugh,
welcome
so
back. Oh my gosh. Can you guys believe it? 2025.
It seems like one of those futuristic numbers you see in like sci-fi movies from the 80s. I mean, I guess it is. We almost have a flying car. Didn't I see a news piece?
We do have flying cars.
It's coming. Okay, we're almost there, guys.
We have flying cars.
We don't have them. But,
right. Civilization does have some flying cars.
And somebody's got drones that are the size of SUVs, so that's cool.
Somebody.
Yeah. I have a drone the size of my fist. That's equally impressive, right?
There you go.
Right. And we also have further conspiracies afoot. Fellow conspiracy realist, toward the end of the year, one of the last recordings we did in 2024, we looked at the case of Luigi Mangione, and we took a moment and we paused and we said, let's hold off on chapter 2 in hopes of acquiring more information about this ongoing, deeply divisive situation.
I think we left off talking about that epic perp walk.
Yeah.
Which has been memed 6 ways to Sunday. It looks like the cover of the most badass gangster rap album ever made.
Ted Kaczynski could never.
Did you guys see the pictures that were comparing Luigi Mangione's the shirt, the collared white shirt that he was wearing, and the overshirt, and then the one the JFK's assassin was wearing in that moment when is that the moment when he yelled out he was a patsy? No, that was a different moment.
You're saying they were fit? They were fit twins? Is that what you're saying?
They looked like twins. It was so crazy.
Right. And then it reminds me too of the extensive armchair speculation on the CCTV shots of the guy getting a drink at Starbucks versus the shots of Mangione, some of which are entirely AI slop, by the way. Who is Luigi? You may be asking. Please listen to chapter 1 before continuing. We'll tell you the brief, quick, and dirty for a recap here. Right now, the headline is Luigi Mangione is a guy from a prominent Maryland family who is currently in custody on suspicion of murdering a UnitedHealthcare CEO named Brian Thompson.
A regular William Zanzinger. Sorry, it was a Bob Dylan reference. He was part of a good family that was involved in the politics of Maryland.
Yeah, but isn't it weird? It hit the trust fund that family has is only around 4 million. It's only around 4 million. And then you compare that, just to say that word, like a well-off, influential family, they only had a trust of 4 million, which is amazing. I can't imagine having that.
I was about to say, Matt, you're really making me feel very poor.
No.
I loved it. I loved that.
But think about the actual power players, like in any city like that. Their trusts are in
immeasurable.
A little higher.
Well, immeasurable, perhaps. But so are you saying that you think because he was from a less prominent family that he was maybe made a patsy? Or I'm sorry, just trying to put the pieces together.
I'm sorry, yeah. Sometimes just trying to. The concept I'm putting together here is that the way it's spoken about, like he was a high achiever in academics. He was a part of this family that is wealthy and somewhat influential, right? But it's nothing compared to the person that he killed and like that person's family. And the people that run in those circles. Right?
And it's nothing compared to the fast food cabal of families that clearly run Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Interesting.
And it does certainly seem like he is being made quite the example of. Let's just say.
Yes. Mangione, going back to the perp walk idea, had received a ton of political theater. The mayor of New York was there during the perp walk, as were other notable movers and shakers. Timothy McVeigh, who was responsible for the 1995 domestic terrorist attack in Oklahoma City, didn't get half the people that Luigi Mangione had on his perp walk. And that, again, is another tea leaf that people are reading into to our earlier question about setting an example.
I mean, the photo op of it all, where Eric Adams is concerned with his police background and the whole show of force, the pageantry, like you say, Ben, of the whole thing, it's pretty stark.
Yeah, you could almost feel Batman perched up somewhere in the background of Gotham City just watching. We got him.
Well, all the memes were comparing him to the Joker. I mean, that's like a big thing that's been, all over the internet, comparing him, I guess, to the Joaquin Phoenix kind of Joker. More the like freedom fighting, bring down the man Joker than the watch the world burn Joker.
And it's kind of it's not kind of, there's no kind of about it. In that we see a larger context, we see a condemnation of the observer society, the passive observer society that has sprouted and blossomed in the wake of the information age. Because there was an excellent question we were asking in chapter 1. What if Mangione was not so, as we say, photogenic or camera ready? What if he was schlubby? What if he had bad hair or was snaggle-toothed?
Just a 4-pack rather than the 8 that he's clearly sporting.
Right, without the gutters. And you know what I'm talking about, fans of Rick and Morty.
Yes.
Those gutters. So please do listen to chapter 1 before continuing. We're going to pause for a word from our sponsors, and then we'll return. If you're not from the United States or you took a holiday break from the news, we'll give you a brief recap of the events in the most factual way possible. Here are the facts.
Hey, it is December 4th, 2024. Oh, it feels like such a long time ago now. Almost exactly a month from the day that we're recording.
Are you serious?
Right.
Yes.
Only that long? That's crazy.
Feels
it really
like
does.
a year.
It's really wild.
It was, as Adam Duritz said, a long December.
Oh, geez, reason to believe. The question is, what do you believe?
And that's also one of the songs I was playing on repeat, you guys, with Feel So Good by Chuck Mangione.
The smell of hospitals in winter. What a line.
Okay.
It's fantastic lyricism. There's
not
no
bad.
denying it.
It's not bad.
You see the way the light reflects off a girl?
Crowded room with a girl. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, it's that Adam Duritz, a real romantic. Much like our boy Luigi Mangione.
Bringing it back.
Bit of a romantic.
All right, so several years ago.
Her earrings were so shiny. Sorry.
So several years ago, it was December 4th, 2024. It's early in the morning.
That's right. Brian Thompson, CEO of UnitedHealthcare, was leaving the Marriott he was staying at. Was this a fancy Marriott or just kind of a regular old? Okay, all right. When I hear Marriott, I guess I don't really think fancy, but in New York, it's a brand. There certainly are high-end Marriotts.
It's a group term. It's an umbrella term. Like
that's right.
How there are different kinds of cancer.
100%. Thank you, Ben. So he was leaving the Marriott, the fancy Marriott, mind you, that he was staying at, which was across the street from the Hilton, the New York Hilton Midtown, where he was attending an investor conference for UnitedHealthcare in one of those, hotel ballroom type situations.
And what would have happened at that investor conference? What would Thompson have said? We don't know. He did not make it to the conference. He's walking along West 54th Street. Pull up a map if you wish. It's about 6:45 a.m. local time. He's an early riser. He is shot from behind by a person wearing a mask and a hoodie, wielding a mysterious handgun. Thompson is shot 3 times. Essentially, 6 shots are attempted, but only 3 land. He's transported to the local hospital where he is pronounced dead at 7:12 a.m.
Would he have been pronounced dead in transit, or is that something they don't even officially do until they get him into a room and a doctor sees him?
Right. Was he DOA?
He likely was. It seems like he likely was pretty DOA.
Yeah. We know the official pronunciation of death occurred there at the hospital, and it did not take very long.
No.
Look, a lot of murders happen in New York. It did not take very long for the authorities to put their top men on the case.
Well, guys, I'm sorry, I don't mean to repeat myself, but I just want to hit it home one more time. I heard about this on one of those television monitors, those LCD monitors that you have in elevators and like office buildings and hotels. And I had no idea that it happened in New York, but I was in New York at our offices, which is just a couple of blocks from this exact site. And I was so crazy slammed that day that I just didn't really even give it another thought. I had no idea that it had happened right down the street from where I was. It was,
wow.
Again, feels like ages ago.
Before we get even further into exactly what happened that day, can we just quickly talk about how strange it is that whoever the killer was was outside of the exact hotel entrance exit that Brian left from. Because
how did they know the route?
Well,
there were at least
three.
Yet. There were at least 3 exits. Yeah, in this moment, we don't know that, but it is very strange. And maybe it was just a calculation about the closest way to get from Hotel X to Hotel Y.
Right. For sure. But it's so specific. I'm really looking forward to, maybe that's a weird way of putting it, to finding out how this guy stalked and managed to get all of these details just right. It's not super easy.
Whomever that person may be, right? Because Mangione has not been legally convicted. Mangione has, in fact, pled not guilty to all the charges, which we'll get to. We talked about it a little bit in chapter 1. One interesting thing that the investigators know that I don't think the public knows yet, to the point about mapping out the route or planning the hit, which hotel room specifically was Thompson in? Right. And what was the relation of that hotel room to the exit, and which exit was most convenient for reaching the Hilton there? These are questions that the public doesn't have the answers to yet.
Was there a little bit of luck involved? I do wonder that as well.
Yeah. And was it good luck or bad luck? I guess it depends on your perspective. Right.
And I know we're going to get into it, but I just think the not guilty plea in and of itself is mega interesting for reasons.
Sure. Right. Because often when people are ideologically motivated, they want to plead guilty. They want visibility. They want to further proselytize for their cause.
Well, it sure as crap seemed like he wanted to get caught. It seems like something out of a comic book, in terms of like what he had on him, how available he was, more or less. I mean, it just almost feels like the scene in Seven where John Doe puts his hands up and walks out and says, "Detectives!"
It was, God, Seven was great.
Really good.
It's a rollicking buddy comedy that's perfect for children.
Feel good.
Yeah, it feels so good.
Well, it also seems almost too perfect, right?
A little bit. Yes, it does. And this is an excellent setup, levels to that one, because Mangione was apprehended. He is currently in custody. On December 9th, several years ago, 5 days after that shooting, authorities arrested a 26-year-old man named Luigi Mangione at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. He was quickly charged with the murder of Brian Thompson, along with a rogues gallery of other related charges, including, illegal possession of certain firearms and paraphernalia, terrorism charges. They hit him with everything they could.
Initially, it was weapons charges just to get him out of that McDonald's and into, a holding cell for a little while until they brought the other ones. But yeah. They threw the book.
Yeah, they got a legal foot in the door, right? And then once they had possession of him, habeas corpus and so on, they were able to add on the other charges, indeed the ones that they were truly looking for. So this guy takes the internet by storm. He becomes a folk hero to some, an anti-hero to others, clear and present danger to a lot of billionaires. If we're being honest, we all remember when, it was either Elon Musk or Adrian Dittman who went on X and said, "Hey guys, it's not based to kill CEOs."
It's not based, indeed. It's actually, what's the opposite of based?
Acidic?
Whack? No, I don't know. Whack is sort of old school. There's definitely something that's the opposite of based. But
cringe, lame.
Oh, cringe. Yeah, I think cringe works. Yeah.
Goofy. Anyway, so
it's just weird.
It's a little weird.
It's oddly specific, if we're being diplomatic. We talked about this in chapter 1. There's a vast narrative war continuing now between the public and established media outlets, as well as institutions of power, law enforcement, the judiciary, and, the financial people.
Well, it does kind of make you think of the whole idea of like one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter, or like thinking about Robin Hood, who was a menace, to the sheriff of Nottingham and all of the nobles and all of that. But in fact, he was kind of murdering people and at the very least stealing from people, committing crimes. And so depending on which side of that divide you were on, he was either, enemy of the state or, doing you a solid. And then it becomes the question of like, how do we view these corporations? Like, are they villainous enough that in this fight for equity and the ability to live a, I guess what's the word, dignified life, like are these companies and these CEOs that level of villain that they should be executed?
Right. What are the consequences? And we have to understand the larger context here. If you are tuning in to this show and you are not from the United States or you have never visited this crazy, crazy place, then you may not be aware that there is a bit of preface to this. There has been an increased division of haves and have-nots in this country, which is approaching the Gilded Age of the 1920s. There are things like, or cases like the Sackler family in the world of medicine, which clearly got away with aiding and abetting and escalating an opioid crisis, which continues today. The public, by and large, is primed to consider this socioeconomic demographic of the haves as enemies.
100%. I saw a video yesterday actually on Instagram where it was a British reporter going around to people on the street and asking them how much they thought certain medical supplies cost in America.
Oh, yeah.
And they were shocked. People were like, how much do you think an EpiPen costs? They're like, $80. Like, no, $600, and how much do you think an ambulance ride costs? And the guy's like, well, I guess it depends on where you live, but what, $100, 100 pounds?
Right.
$2,500. It's wild.
And then add to that, the follow-up question where they say, well, what if someone dies because they can't get insulin? And then the Americans go, oh, yeah, that
happens, and it's just fine.
That's a Tuesday.
Yeah. I actually have a quick story about this, guys, and just to bring it personal for a moment, right after all this stuff went down, not right after, 2 weeks after all this went down with Brian Thompson's death, my dad kind of had a little heart situation while he was out with my mom and had to get picked up in an ambulance. And hasn't, it's only happened one other time, and it was really scary because I just got a phone call, and headed that way where they are. And it was a medical emergency where like he needed that ambulance. It wasn't it's nice that an ambulance could take us there. My dog is playing in the background. But he got one of, what do you call them, Ben?
Non-consensual Uber.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You got one of those.
That's it. I do call them that. Yes.
Yes, you do.
So we got one of those, and he's in his 70s. So he, he worked for a long time. He had really good healthcare with his job, good healthcare. Again, like one of the higher levels of healthcare that you can get. Now he's on Medicare and he's old enough to get those benefits. It didn't actually hurt him that much financially to take this ambulance ride in, to then get seen by a specialist, to then, have a bunch of tests done on him and get drugs so that he can leave and he was okay. But for anybody else who's not in their 70s, who didn't work all their life in that way,
paying into that system,
that situation of needing to be picked up because there's something wrong with your heart, and then you have to go hang out in the hospital and they want to keep you and run tests and all of that. That is a life-changing event, not for your health, but for your ability to pay for everything else in your life, because that just sits there now.
It will break you.
Yeah.
It may be astonishing for people from other developed countries to hear this hard truth. The majority of U.S. citizens are one medical catastrophe away from poverty. And it is incredibly expensive to be poor in this country. The safety net is continually eroding, and it's a long pattern. You can look up phrases like starve the beast. We welcome you to that related conspiracy. And I think it's also fascinating that while we're giving a quick recap of the Mangione situation, conspiracy, series of events, we're immediately also talking about the larger context of healthcare. This is front of mind for everybody as soon as they learned the identity of the shooting victim. And it's weird too, guys, because it seems, despite this huge divide now between the haves and have-nots, the public and the establishment media, one thing everybody, or the majority of people, seem to agree upon is that Mangione, while not yet convicted, is the murderer. The majority of people think the guy did it, based on some of the evidence we explore in Chapter 1.
Yeah, and they're stoked about it. Like, they think it was a great thing to have done.
Yeah. We mentioned what was found in his backpack, right? I think that was episode 1.
It was, yeah.
Okay,
Monopoly money and what has been determined to have been a ghost gun, which I believe was made up of 3D printed components, the kind that schematics can be downloaded and then, you can actually print them yourself if you have the right equipment.
As well as a suppressor, which was key, as well as a purported manifesto.
Which hit the internet pretty quick. And although a lot of people were skeptical about the veracity of the snippets that were being seen or passed around, it did turn out that most of them were right.
Really? Okay, see, I wanted to ask you guys about that because I've seen a couple of different versions maybe, and then, I'm hearing that a lot of it is false, but then a couple of them were real, and then I think it was the New York Post made a whole documentary that they put on there, and they read directly from it, which made me feel a little better, even though it's New York Post. But
right, but the documentary is given the time constraints the documentary is working under, I think they did a pretty good job. The title, in a burst of humility, was New York Post presents Luigi Mangione, Monster or Martyr. See? And
brownie points for making up that title.
It was good, really.
It's the alliteration that does it. Okay, I'll check it out.
We're the first people to pay respects and give credit where it's due on that kind of stuff. Do we love the New York Post overall as a source? Pass. But do we like the documentary? Well done with the information available at the time. Is that fair?
I think so.
That's fair. Okay.
I mean, again, I haven't seen it, but Ben, did you notice though? So do we feel like we do know in some part the contents of that manifesto? Has the full thing been printed? Is that what's in the documentary?
There's a war on truth, I would argue.
Oh, that's interesting. So you still feel that it's iffy?
The courts will decide.
Well, and the courts will,
which I know is such a non-answer, but parts of it have been repeatedly reported.
I guess that's what I was seeing.
Truth. Multiple sources confirm different parts of it. But yeah, in the documentary, to Matt's earlier point, they do read directly from it, so we know that the press does have what is agreed to be the manifesto actual.
Yeah. All I was getting at was that the snippet that I saw right away ended up being repeated later as this is accurate. This is like
the parasite statement, or the statement about supporting the feds.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's just so tough when this kind of thing happens because we are in the same boat as everybody else trying to figure out, okay, is that the actual thing, and who says that's the actual thing?
I'm going to lean into the phrase "a war on truth," and perhaps the Mangione case is already a casualty of that continuing war. So previously on Stuff They Don't Want You to Know, we chose to hold off on Chapter 2 in hopes that more details would emerge. And just like you folks, we have been tuned in. We have been following things, reaching out to folks in some cases. And now we have returned. There will doubtlessly be more updates, maybe even a Chapter 3 or something on Strange News. We'll have to see how it works out. But perhaps for now, we'll take a break for a word from our sponsors, and then we'll dive into the current affairs and the larger context. Here's where it gets crazy. All right. Can't remember exactly where we put a bow on this in Chapter 1, but I do believe we mentioned Mangione had, after his arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania, he waived his right to an extradition hearing, which is where you could say, don't take me out of Pennsylvania. He said, yeah, no, fine. Do it. Take me to New York, right? Which is, again, where the murder occurred. We know the judge that will preside over the current legal proceedings, that is Catherine Parker, a magistrate judge. The trial date, I think, is yet to be determined still. If convicted on these charges, we gave the list of the charges in Chapter 1. If convicted, he will probably face life in prison without the possibility of parole. So it's not a death penalty situation, I think, is the big differentiator here.
And yeah, since that time, he's pled not guilty in a court and said, no, that is not me. I'm not guilty to both this murder charge and the terrorism charges, the heavier stuff. I think it would be pretty tough to plead not guilty to the weapons charges that he faced in Pennsylvania. I don't know how all that's going to play out.
Right.
But
well,
yeah.
At the end of the day, I mean, despite how damning the stuff he had in his backpack might seem, isn't this all relatively circumstantial evidence?
That's the thing, right? So
the ID that he had
was fake.
It was fake, but it was used at that hostel in New York.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
all I'm saying is it's not illegal to be sketchy. You know, I mean,
thank you. Yeah,
that's all.
And,
we know that very well here. Stuff they don't want you to know.
So it is true, but it's an excellent question about what defines circumstantial. Right? The concept of circumstantial evidence has been unfairly weaponized against people in the U.S. in the past. There are countless examples of that, and you can see some terrifying and disturbing examples of that in shows like Wrongful Conviction with our pals Jason and Maggie. Do check it out. We also know, to this narrative war, we also know that different social media platforms were shutting down support of Luigi Mangione. We're not condoning any actions. Again, we try to be very fair in saying this individual has not yet been convicted of a crime. But to your earlier point, Noel, there were people lauding this man, romanticizing him, right? Like Ted Bundy back in the day.
Oh, dude. In that New York Post documentary, there's a comedian named Jourdain something, a very funny comedian who works out of New York, who had a show at the Comedy Cellar in New York that night. And he describes how, as soon as he got on stage, he started talking about this situation, how the CEO of UnitedHealthcare got killed, and how much support, how there was laughter and clapping at just the fact that this healthcare CEO got murdered. And they wanted, like, he made a joke about other CEOs, and everybody was laughing and clapping and applauding right after it happened.
And I guess it was on SNL, but Chris Rock made a pretty good joke talking about, like, oh, it's anytime a person with family or, you know, kids or whatever is killed, it's a tragedy and nobody should be excited about this. But sometimes drug dealers get shot.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
He did say that. And this, that's clearly comparing Thompson to, you know, a drug dealer and pointing to one of the great divides of the discourse here, which is how directly do you have to be involved in a murder or someone's death to be considered the murderer? You know what I mean?
That's right.
Physically pulling the trigger or green lighting an AI slot program that denies claims. The news is still coming out. A lot of medical professionals have come out and without condoning the murder of Thompson, let's be careful with that, they have said that in their experience, UnitedHealthcare killed people. That's effectively what they've said. They've said, I've submitted this claim. This person's in a coma, for instance, desperately in need of some sort of circulatory or cardiac medication. And UHC, or their bot, their ChatGPT, said no. This is so crazy because we also see the Streisand effect, I think we referenced in chapter 1. Reddit was removing threads about UHC and Thompson. There was a fundraiser to pay Mangione's legal fees, and GoFundMe removed it. Certain establishment, print and online institutions in the media have been scrubbing their comment sections when they release, especially tone-deaf op-eds, like the one who said Brian Thompson is the real working class hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's entirely accurate. So, all right, we know
it's a tough thing for all of us, I think, to grapple with, right? So you gotta sympathize with every human being that is taking in what has occurred and then trying to form their own thoughts on it, because it does feel weighted in one direction, at least to me,
with
which is
every
really
source. Sad. Yeah, with every source you read, you know, the discourse on X or Twitter is very different from what the New York Times wants you to take away from the reporting. It's very easy with just a few tweaks, you know, a few philosophical additions of a serif to change what people take away from factual information. And if something doesn't fit the narrative, as we'll see in our later Stockholm episode, it's devilishly easy to downplay, diminish, or remove that entirely. Mangione is adding to his legal team, he has one of the best lawyers in New York right now working with him. He also recently took on the services or the advice of a guy named Craig Rothfeld. Craig Rothfeld, a former inmate himself, known as a defense strategy consultant. He was most recently and most prominently in the news for consulting with Harvey Weinstein from earlier.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, a prison consultant. Like, I don't know how to make your time in there better, how to communicate better outside. I don't really understand it. I read that in page 6. Yes. And right underneath there, it says like gossip or something. So again, with a lot of this information, it's just trying to figure out, is that just something someone is saying and then page 6 is saying it, or is it actually happening?
He did appear. We know that Rothfeld did appear in some legal proceedings with Mangione in terms of what this defense strategy and prison consultation may be, how we define it. You can find quotes, and page 6 is a tabloid, let's be honest, but you can find quotations with Rothfeld saying stuff about how to help someone survive the first 90 days of lockup, which are incredibly frightening. You know, prison is, especially in the United States, somewhat of a hostile environment.
Just a bit. Yeah.
A little bit.
Guys, by the way, just off that note, we need to look into what's going on with Fulton County's prison system. There's some craziness going on. We need to do some deep dives into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've heard the scuttlebutt there, but I don't doubt it. I know there's been some pretty gnarly stuff in the past, but
human rights violations.
Yeah, exactly.
Like health stuff.
Yeah. Letting people die, essentially, like denying them needful care. And we're not talking about, oh gosh, I'm glad we have to do an episode on it. We're not talking about cosmetic stuff. You know, we're not talking about having Montezuma's revenge or just a bad weekend of pooping. We're talking about people who died and could have been saved quite easily.
And like bed bugs and stuff that end up taking your life, which is, it's a whole thing.
Dirty water. That's a huge thing. Sanitation or lack of sanitation is still killing millions of people every year.
But the prison Luigi Mangione's in is a little different.
Yes.
It's a little nicer. No, it doesn't mean it's happy or safe.
It's still hostile.
Yeah.
But it's like frenemy hostile instead of, enemy soldier hostile. There you go. It's a rough one. Nobody wants to be there so far because inequality has not quite gotten to the point yet where a bunch of people are purposely trying to get into prison. I would argue it's on the way. Unfortunately, it's on the way. We already see isolated cases over the course of this show wherein people will purposely botch a bank robbery just so they can get locked up. It's, again, a damning condemnation of the current state of affairs. And have you guys been looking at these polls? Various groups, not really media groups all the time, but nonpartisan boffins and eggheads have been conducting polls in the United States. And they have found an astonishing divide between people. One poll was about 1,000 college students, and they asked these college students, what should happen if Mangione is found guilty?
Yeah, that is a good question because it seems like so many of his supporters already think that he is guilty. So like immediately my mind was jumping to like, will there be like riots in the streets, like justice for Luigi? But all the people that would support him already think he did it.
Right. And we do have to just, in the spirit of knowing about the world around you, we do have to say it is always important to talk about jury nullification as a concept. Maybe not in this case, but I don't know about you guys. I was surprised to see how many people were picking up that old and very important concept and propagating it. Do we want to say what jury nullification is real quick for anybody who hasn't heard it?
Yeah, I'm always a little bit fuzzy on it. I know it's the kind of thing that people, if you say you believe in jury nullification when you're getting picked for jury duty, that they will exclude you. It's one of those like hacks people talk about. But yeah, please do remind us.
Well, the whole point of trial by jury is to have a unified decision by that jury. That jury comes through and says, this is what we, the jury, feel happened, right? Is this person guilty or not guilty? And what are they guilty of? And if you've got one person on that 12-person team that stands up in the little meetings, that happen in the back after the trial is concluded and says, no, I don't think this person is guilty.
Isn't that just a hung jury, though? Is that the same as jury nullification?
What I think what we're getting toward is the idea that jury nullification says, look, we're jurors in a criminal trial, and be the one person, to your example, Matt, in this scenario, who stands up and says, I'm not going to say he's guilty. I'm not going to say they're guilty because I know they broke the law, sure, but I think the law is wrong.
Yeah.
So you're putting the statute, the law, the policy on trial instead of the human individual.
Hence, coming forth in the selection process and speaking out like in favor of nullification could be a red flag for the attorneys that are going to pick you or cut you.
How would you respond if this case was for felony possession of cannabis? And if you're there with like a fish shirt on and you've got your hemp necklace and you say, well, I think everybody should have more weed, then they're probably not going to pick you for that jury.
Well, I don't know if you guys saw some of these op-eds in some of the main news publications that are saying things like, all you people out there that are trying to get on the jury for, to nullify this case, you should really just abstain. And like, that'd be way more noble than trying to sneak onto the jury so you can make him not guilty, basically.
To sabotage the case.
Yes.
Right? To trigger a mistrial or,
Well, because that's the scary thing with jury nullification. It doesn't have to be a caricature of a person, right, that goes up there for a case. It could be just any old person that pretends to not have been wronged by healthcare in the past, who pretends that they're just going to go on and be a completely objective observer of this trial, but really they're going in as almost an undercover agent.
But would that not be considered contempt of court?
No, not contempt of court. Contempt of court would require them to do interruptive behaviors, to make a scene, basically.
Sure, but if you're being dishonest for the purposes of screwing the whole system up, isn't that in and of itself an act of contempt towards the court?
Depends on how you do it.
How do you prove that somebody did that? Unless that person then goes on a bunch of, goes on Maury, which doesn't exist, I don't think, but whatever, goes on and talks, to Geraldo for a long time.
Or publishes a book while the trial is ongoing.
No, that's a good point.
Called Why I Sabotaged the Mangione Trial.
Yeah.
Then also, a good example of this, of course, the seminal work, 12 Angry Men. Do also check out an amazing film, Devil's Advocate. There's a jury selection scene in there.
The new Clint Eastwood movie, Juror Number 2, is actually quite good and has some shades of this kind of thing in it as well.
Yeah. And in the Devil's Advocate jury selection scene specifically, you can see a defense crew working assiduously to kind of plumb the depths of the human personalities. And
in their favor.
Yeah. Or like whatever is advantageous to them.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's happening now.
And that happens on both the prosecution and the defense side, and they're both allowed to do that. And it's like kind of the name of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why they make the big bucks. If we go to this poll that we mentioned earlier, College Pulse, conducted a pretty small sample size. They asked 1,000 college students what would happen if Mangione was found guilty. And most people did respond. 32% of the participants in the survey said he should be sentenced to life in jail, but he should have the possibility to be paroled. And 14% said, no, put him in jail for life, never parole him. 26% essentially said, just give him a couple years, give him a fixed term, and then let him out. And then 2% said, I don't care about the laws. He should get the death penalty.
Woo. Strong. Wonder what class those people belong to.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think even more telling is when the poll goes further and asks if the respondents sympathize with the suspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. More than 50% of those respondents say they strongly sympathize with Mangione, because a hard fact about living life in the United States is that you know someone who died because of the privatized healthcare system. It touched you, and what was it? A further percentage said they somewhat sympathize with Mangione, and 26% said, I'm neutral about it. And only about a fifth of them, around 20%, said they either don't sympathize or strongly do not sympathize.
What was the sample size of this?
1,000 college students.
Oh, geez.
That's pretty small sample size.
It's a small sample size and pretty specific background. I don't know.
Well, but isn't that interesting? College students, I would posit, and maybe I'm wrong here, someone that age probably hasn't gone through a lot of health crises in their life yet, at least for personally, right?
Well, they may
maybe
have,
for their
like
family.
like you and your dad and stuff. There could have certainly been,
Again, within the family or something, so they know, and as you said, Ben, they've been touched by it, but they themselves have not probably gone through a lot of things like 26-year-old Mangione went through with his, like, the pins injury that he had in his back and the problems that he was having. I'm just interested to know, like, the thinking of somebody who is that young.
Yeah. It's interesting because, again, you could say you're directly affected by a tragedy if it happens to someone you love. But there is a differentiation there, Matt, in terms of being physically yourself affected by an injury or a medical condition. And the reason I started out this poll pointing out that small sample size is because there's another poll from NORC, not NARC, NORC. NORC is the National Opinion Research Center out of University of Chicago.
That's the wonkiest name of all time.
They changed it, just like the Learning Channel morphed into TLC when they stopped caring whether people learn stuff. And the now National Opinion Research Center is just NORC, NORC. Their poll is fascinating because they found 70% of the people they asked about Mangione, they said he does not hold all the responsibility for Thompson's murder, even if he did it.
Wow.
Which is a weird bit of cognitive parkour.
Yeah. Who did it?
They're like, well, he sort of did it.
Yeah, he printed a gun and traveled and did all the research and then stalked the guy, pulled the trigger. But,
yeah, that's such a weird like Jersey shrug. But I was just saying.
That is if Luigi Mangione actually is not the person convicted. That did it. Yeah.
Not convicted yet. And we also know groupies have started gathering outside the facility where he's held. We talked about that lookalike contest that occurred, or the series of lookalike contests that occurred. There's already a documentary out. We mentioned earlier, New York Post presents Luigi Mangione, Monster or Martyr. And going back to our earlier thing about a war on truth, AI Slop has also entered the chat. Did you guys see the fake mugshot?
No.
I'm going to look at it right now. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Over on Threads, which is kind of Meta or Instagram's attempt at Twitter, there was this picture that went viral, which appeared to be the official New York mugshot of Luigi Mangione. It was later, pretty soon after, it was confirmed to be AI generated, but the damage was done. You print the wild claims on the front page. You do retractions on, wait for it, page 6. Hey, callbacks. It's a callback episode. I mean, I don't know. I think this is a tangential point, but perhaps important for upcoming explorations on this show. It's misinformation, right? It's not disinformation. People aren't necessarily attempting to sway the narrative through deceitful means, but it's spreading because people are mistaking a lie for the truth. And we're going to see, I posit you guys, we're going to see way more misinformation in the Mangione case as it goes on. The narrative is deeply divided. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we also see some claims that go against the official narrative already. There is a looming war on truth. Weaponized AI disinfo and misinfo is only going to grow, right? It's unstoppable at this point. Favorite conspiracy theories, you guys, one of the ones we mentioned just a little bit in chapter 1, The idea that Luigi Mangione was framed. The idea that despite having a manifesto, having the ghost gun components, having the cash, and, looking a hell of a lot like the guy on camera, that he was somehow framed. He said he did not have that 10,000 in US cash and I think 2,000 in foreign currency. He said it was planted on him, that someone just slipped 10K into his backpack.
Luigi himself stated that?
He did.
Interesting.
So.
Interesting.
I mean...
Well, now, we do know... again, I feel like it's confirmed. We do know that he was somewhat disconnected from his family. His family was searching for him because he had been living in Hawaii for a while and then lost contact with his family. I mean, that feels like a situation where if you do have some money, maybe you're carrying around large sums of cash with you if you're just traveling from one place to another.
Which is not illegal.
No. But I mean, it seems like something you might do.
Yeah, it seems like a reasonable and plausible action, right? You're on the move. This goes deeper. The internet is getting nuts and bananas for this. There are so many unverified claims and wild speculation blossoming across every social media platform you can imagine. Somebody is probably on Farmers Only talking about this right now. I feel like we should set off 2025 by mentioning Farmers Only.
In every episode.
In every episode. Every episode, Morty. Every episode. Farmers Only. Sorry, I rewatched all of Rick and Morty, and it is getting to me. It shows. But it's crazy because this kind of stuff, misinformation or speculation, it is asymmetric. It's so easy to create it, and it's so difficult to tamp it down. It's whack-a-mole, I mean, look, there are platforms trying to shut down things. Their rationale can be any genre of we know best, but they're playing real life whack-a-mole. For every one statement that they don't like that they take down, 10 others spring up in its wake. It's a digital version of a Hydra. It's the Barbara Streisand effect times a million.
Well, yeah, because anyone can say anything, and with something happening as high profile as this, with as many eyes on, and the way the New York Post documentary puts it is that this thing caught fire almost immediately because of those small circumstances, right? I mean, that just have huge implications. So everybody went, whoa, what is going on here? I need to know more. And as soon as anything comes out anywhere, especially with the way we consume the dang TikTok and YouTube and Instagram videos that just have captions and no context or no citations, you're just like, oh, okay, that's happening. And then that'll get put into some small opinion piece that then other places report on or just copy and paste. And
game of telephone.
Oh my gosh, it spreads.
Okay, so here's, if we can get cinematic for a second, you guys, here's what we know happened at some point. People are trying to find answers. People want explanations. And somewhere in the hinterlands of internet thought, a guy looked up in the darkness. A guy was trying to figure out this whole Mangione thing. He looked up in the darkness. He shook his fist at the sky and he said, Pelosi! Nancy Pelosi.
Isn't that a weird thing? Because Nancy Pelosi went through something very strange a little bit after this, right? A little bit after the shooting?
Yeah, the AOC Democratic kerfuffle, wherein Pelosi was accused of sabotaging Ocasio-Cortez's attempt to helm a committee in Congress based on seniority of people who were already in line. Pelosi
but she also got hospitalized.
She also got hospitalized. That's true.
I know I just remember seeing that was being connected up like, oh man, something's happening with Pelosi now. And then all of this other stuff just avalanched.
Cue Charlie Day.
There is no Pepe Sylvia.
Right. Because also, there are very valid accusations and allegations regarding insider trading on Pelosi's part. And to be completely fair, across all the aisles of Congress, they've had a problem with insider trading and ethics for quite some time. And they're is no accountability. Let's be honest. There are no consequences when those folks rig the system. That's all true. Pelosi is a recurrent character in so many political conspiracy theories, but here's the juice of this one. This is the umami. This is the Charlie Day moment. Who wants to introduce it? We can be safe and just phrase it in interrogative, just make it questions.
Okay, I can do it. What if UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson was preparing for a testimony against Nancy Pelosi for potential insider trading?
What if?
I remember specifically seeing this on an Instagram reel. Someone just stating it as though it was fact. Although they did it in the what if. They did it exactly like this.
Yeah.
And then they lay out all of this stuff about Nancy Pelosi buying shares of this one specific healthcare company and all this other stuff, which may have actually been true stuff, but the way it was stated, it was just so ugh.
It's misleading, it is also that kind of whatevery is definitely tagging base in a conversation. It's up there with a move where someone says, what I was going to say, and then they just say the thing as though they have like little sheep's clothing over what I was going to say, tag base. What if? I'm just asking questions. Fine, but don't weaponize it. There's red string logic here. We remember the earlier cyber attack that UHC experienced in 2024. Many years ago now, it seems. I can't believe December felt so long. December felt so, beat me here, Tennessee. December felt so long. Is it because we took a break from recording?
Well, that whole liminal space between Christmas and New Year's does sort of extend into a black infinity of nothingness sometimes.
Yeah, I can't believe, it's Friday as we're recording. I didn't know what day it was until yesterday because we had to record something. Anyway, that's unrelated, very low stakes. The cybersecurity thing is interesting because Nancy Pelosi or her financial arms invested after the cyber attack. They invested in a security firm called Palo Alto Networks. And not too long after that investment, the company won a contract to investigate the cyber attack against UHC. I mean, is it a nothing burger?
Who knows? I mean, that kind of stuff that's a whole episode in itself, right? I mean, we could drill down into that as deep as we wanted to, and there's probably some weird stuff going on there because it's money. It's so much money and influence, and think about putting that on a resume, like just for that company. Oh, we investigated this, massive attack on the largest healthcare corporation in the United States.
Or, also we would have to drill down because imagine what is the amount of investment, right? We know Congress gets away with insider trading. That conspiracy is true. It is unethical. They just have access to more information than the public, but also investing a little bit of money can happen very easily if you have, as these folks doubtlessly do, if you have a fiduciary or you have a firm that you contract out to and they invest in a bunch of stuff, you may not know, right? An investment doesn't automatically put you in Shark Tank territory. Like you don't automatically own 70% of something because you invested in it. That may be the case. We would just, to your point, Matt, have to look further into it. That's the thread. And as these threads continue, each connection gets more and more tenuous. We want to talk about Maryland. Mangione and Pelosi are both from Maryland. Boom. Case solved. Well, this whole court's out of order.
Makes you want to growl a little bit. What else we got?
Right. Okay. So Pelosi is, the U.S. portrays itself or used to portray itself as a meritocracy. Unfortunately, that's kind of not true. Pelosi's father and her late brother were both mayors of Baltimore. Pelosi's father was a U.S. House rep. And because the Mangione family is prominent in real estate, especially Luigi Mangione's grandfather, folks are saying these two powerful families exist in the same city. They had to interact.
But the family owned a golf club or something, like a country club.
Yes.
Which is, we know that's where some of this stuff goes down.
Mm-hmm. Down on the green. Yeah. But granted, is this not a lot like saying Deliverance was set in Georgia, so therefore everybody in Atlanta is awesome at banjo?
Oof, or
or the other stuff, or
to make you squeal like a pig. Yeah,
kind of. But I don't know. That's so. Okay. That's if everyone had a banjo.
Yeah, like a flying car.
Yeah, right. If everybody in Georgia had a banjo, then you could assume, well, maybe everybody's good at banjo because of Deliverance.
Because of Deliverance and squealing like a pig. Oh my God. I forgot about that one. That's one of those films that I appreciate but don't want to rewatch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
Yeah, the book was good, but still, we digress. Maybe you're right, Matt. Maybe there is more sand to it because we know the Mangione family and the Pelosi family did have a relationship. Powerful families do often congregate. You want to hang with people who are similar to you.
The one weird thing that I maybe didn't understand with this whole line of thinking was, okay, let's imagine Brian Thompson, let's just imagine it's real for a moment. Brian Thompson is going to testify against Nancy Pelosi for insider trading. So a contract killer in the form of someone known to Nancy Pelosi is hired to kill Brian Thompson because he's going to testify. And Nancy somehow, because she has some connection to them, hires this person who is like fully known to her, who would have a direct connection to her.
Right. That's the question when we play the game. Cui bono? Who benefits? Right. And why would you not choose a more direct method? We have a quote from Nancy Pelosi's brother, Thomas J. D'Alessandro III. And this is in 1995, where he talks about his relationship with Luigi's grandfather.
So in 1995, Thomas J. Alessandro III, who is another former Baltimore mayor, and brother of Pelosi, chatted about his relationship with Luigi's grandfather, Nicholas Mangione, in The Sun, which is, pretty charitably can be referred to as a tabloid. He had this to say: Nick Mangione is foremost identified as a family man. That's his calling card, even before he became a successful businessman. He is maybe a little rough around the edges and maybe with an aggressive personality, but a man with a big heart. He earned his success the hard way.
Okay. So the patriarchs are friendly, but we don't know whether Pelosi and Mangione ever met. It's difficult to draw hard evidence from this, especially if we're constructing a mousetrap level conspiracy. Not referring to an actual mousetrap, referring to that awesomely inconvenient game.
Yeah.
The board game Mousetrap.
I don't know that I ever played a full round of that thing. I always just put it together and triggered the trap.
It was so fragile, and also the trap is so appealing. Like, why would you play the game?
Exactly.
Look, there's a larger context here. We'll keep it brief because this is an ongoing case, and we want to be careful about making any unfounded statements. It is clear. It is apolitically, objectively clear the American healthcare system is broken. And the state of that system, the terrible state of healthcare in this country, has been inextricably tied to Mangione, or to the assassination of Brian Thompson. We've got stats here that we don't have to get into, but just for the highlights, we said it in chapter 1, the U.S. has, by all accounts, the worst performing healthcare system among all developed or high-income countries. Guys, it's just terrible. Think about it this way. In 2021, the U.S. life expectancy in the 5 best states for surviving as long as you can, it ranged from like 79.9 years to 80 years. In comparison, the shortest life expectancy among all the other high-income nations is 80.4, meaning the best states for healthcare in the United States are still worse than the worst other developed countries. That's sobering. That is a national defense gap, I would argue.
Absolutely.
So 80.4, shortest life expectancy in the UK, and then 80 or less than 80 in the best states. Got it. Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So maybe when you get in your 60s, time to consider moving,
Shoot. When you get to the point where you might need to, I don't know, have parts of your body examined that you've never had examined before because you're getting older, thinking prostate, other, things like that. Maybe that's when you leave.
Little scappy.
Yeah.
Yeah, some friends of mine who live in Berlin and actually, I guess, immigrated there from the United Kingdom. Well, I guess it was before Brexit, so it was easier to do. But just talking to them about healthcare, the concept of having to worry about your elderly parents and dealing with their care and making sure they live a humane life, in their twilight years, is just alien to them. It's just they don't worry about it. It's all taken care of by the state.
Well, and that's one of the things that Mangione's grandfather, Nicholas Mangione, started. He started like a country club and then a series of elder care facilities. And that's his business.
That's a good business to be in. If you're not too fettered by ethics.
Yeah. But I wonder how the healthcare connection is furthered there, because it does feel like, at least in this country, Medicare would often be the program that folks are using more often than not when they're in there.
Sure. Yeah. Because you'll run out of your personal savings very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's true. In the U.S., everyone massively overpays for healthcare in all forms, including dental and vision. And despite paying so much more, the care they receive by any metric, well, it sucks.
Yep. Well, yeah, because it's not about anything besides generating profit for shareholders, right? It's all about windfall for shareholders, especially when you have corporations that large. But it's not about helping people; it's about saving money.
Yes, exactly, and this is in the front of mind of every American who is thinking about the Mangione case. Everybody knows. Regardless your demographic, everybody knows the problems with healthcare that we have just mentioned. And that's why so many people are saying, look, I'm not going to condone murder, but not condoning murder means I both refuse to champion the homicide of Brian Thompson, and I also refuse to condone the fatal decisions of private healthcare companies, because their business model depends on making money year over year, and they make more money when they deny claims.
Dude, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
From now in perpetuity, we do this as a collective group of Americans. I don't know if you've seen some of the lottery numbers for like these huge, the crazy lotteries where it isn't one, but for once in every 3 months or something, 4 months, like somebody will win the crazy lottery where it's like $1 billion or $500 million. Everybody who wins the lottery from now on takes $100 million as their winnings for their lottery. Then the rest of it gets put into a fund. And once that thing hits like $5 billion, we use that fund to pay for everybody's medical costs, and everybody gets rid of healthcare. And then we just fund it with the lottery every time.
A collective walkout.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's also, I love it.
It would not pay for a fraction of it.
We're in the brainstorming phase. There are no wrong answers. It reminds me of the quick math on the billionaire class.
Yeah.
Right. You could give 100 million to every person in the United States, and several of those people who did that, but you could give 10 million at least. And several people who did that would still be billionaires several times over. Like, this is just ludicrous. This is not normal.
No.
And that's what we have to remember.
And then we freak out when we say, wow, it's insane that everybody identifies with the guy who killed this healthcare CEO. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and I think none of the three of us are certainly advocating for an armed uprising necessarily, or for killing people in power like that. But the sentiment is not that hard to wrap your head around. That's all.
100%. Yeah. Especially when we're considering the perspectives and the very real experiences of other people. We know public officials are intensely concerned with the possibility of Mangione becoming a clarion call, right? Inspiring copycat action, inspiring, to the point, armed revolutions or armed uprisings, similar to the Arab Spring, which is a whole other episode. That's a rabbit hole too.
Well, I was just going to ask you guys too, like, what is the next step of this conversation becoming so front and center? Like, I mean, how do you fight back against, quote unquote, just like the way it is? That's just the way our economics in this country work. Like, short of burning everything down and starting some sort of armed uprising, like, is really no mechanism for changing stuff. I mean, certain people would argue that, oh, write your congressman, vote, et cetera. But I just don't see it.
We start a fund with the lottery winnings.
Yeah, but to Devil's Advocate again, which is a great film, please watch it. To do the Devil's Advocate thing there, one of the billionaire responses, or one of the Kissinger level responses, would immediately be simple: we'll just rig the lottery so our guy wins.
Dang it! Dang it!
So we need to start our own lottery.
Okay.
Right? Run by the people, for the people, and you can't participate if you make too much money.
I mean, it's very intriguing, no question. But it's also like, we've got this new administration coming in that is all hot to like change the status quo and all of that good stuff. But they're certainly not talking about these issues because it's not a popular issue for the millionaire, billionaire business class who they seem to be the most beholden to, one would argue.
Yeah, we also know the U.S. is most likely entering a new era of privatization. So things that were formerly considered public and part of the, the quote unquote common good may be commodified. We're not making a judgment call on that yet because it hasn't occurred yet, but the trend is there. There's something in the wind. And maybe we end on this. I love the questions you brought up here at the end, Noel. We, like the rest of this country, have to wonder at this deep and accelerating divide, not just in the narrative of one case, one murder, but in the larger context. And we have to ask ourselves, what comes next? Is there something they don't want us to know? And if so, what is it? We'd love your help answering this question. We are going to call it a day. We're off on the broad horizon of 2025, and we want to hear from you. Thanks so much for joining us. Please contact us via email, telephonic device, or on the social media platforms we just dunked on hard for like an hour.
That's right. You can find our show at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy. On X, FKA Twitter, and on YouTube. On Instagram and TikTok, however, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show. You can also find us as individual human people. I'm How Now Noel Brown on Instagram.
In a burst of unprecedented creativity, you can find an account associated with me as @BenBolin on Instagram, @BenBolinHSW on X. You can also visit the website, benbolin.com. Again, super creative with the names here. Matt, there's an excellent trailer on your social media that I saw recently. Where could people find you?
That's easy. Just head over to Instagram and look up Unlikely Gems. That's me. You'll see fun videos of me in a hat standing around with a microphone. It's awesome. I have one. And there's a trailer for Monster BTK, which you can check out right now. The official trailer is out.
But what's your handle, buddy?
I don't have one. Unlikely Gems.
Is that true? Are you being funny? I don't understand. You do have one.
He is being funny. It is not true.
Okay.
It's just my favorite Instagram account.
They're great.
Okay.
They're great. Also, shout out Wizards with Guns.
Hey, there we go.
I love those guys. So there's another way to contact us, not just as individuals, but as a show. There are a couple of ways. What happens, Matt, if someone's holding a telephonic device in their hot little hands right now?
Well, first, put that phone down. You go outside, look at the trees for a while. Do that for long enough, then you come back in, pick up the phone, and call 1-833-STDWYTK. That is our voicemail system. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know in the message if we can use your message and your voice on the air. If you got more to say than could fit in a 3-minute voicemail, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
the entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. Would like to give a special shout-out to fellow conspiracy realist Darcy, who wrote an epic series, a saga of limericks. Quite enjoyed. Expect us, Darcy. We'll be on the way soon. If you want to be part of this strange adventure, this continuing mission, join us out here in the dark. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.